Dog shit, huh? Bought liquor in the club just to spill on bitches. Snuck a pistol in the club, I'm finna kill a stripper.
Fuck cutting that nigga drink, I'm
What's up, everybody? Back another video. Today I'm talking about the Instagram Reels plus drugs, substances to alt-right pipeline. Apologies for any background noise. Got my fan on. Still hot as hell here. So this is kind of something I've been thinking about a lot. I know a couple people, not some I know better than others. I'm not going to name anyone, but I've noticed this. I don't have any like evidence. This is just like personal, just making it up. But basically, I've noticed like a couple people that are really into substances, and nothing wrong with that. I've experimented, but they're really into substances, and originally they kind of weren't alt right, and they became alt right. And they're Instagram Reels users. Like they love Instagram Reels. They're on there all the time. And obviously a lot of people like Instagram Reels. Instagram's a huge platform. Like I said in the last video, I watch Instagram Reels sometimes. I'm not, not saying I'm better than anyone else. But I do think that there's like a really interesting correlation between these like heavy drug users and kind of this alt-right pipeline. Now, the alt-right pipeline has existed for a long time. I was on YouTube as a kid, and I saw that Ben Shapiro owns this, woke, liberal, fucking feminist or whatever. I saw that video, and I definitely could have ended up like a lot of these guys that I'm talking about. And a lot of people become alt-right without the substances. I don't think that's kind of like a prerequisite for becoming alt-right. What I do think though is the like format that Instagram Reels is, right? It's short form content. I think that kind of format really lends itself to like the intoxicated mind, you know what I mean? And like I think people are intoxicated by Instagram Reels or TikTok or whatever, like when they're sober, right? You're intoxicated by short form content. It's small dopamine hits, right? But now imagine if you're like on a substance that's altering your mind, it's making you feel good, making you feel bad or whatever. Those dopamine hits are even more accentuated, Like, and again, this is no evidence. I'm making this up. I don't know shit about psychology or whatever. But I think that, when you're on a substance, right? In my personal opinion, right? You kind of lose a little bit of control, right? And especially like alcohol, psychedelics, other types of, I think psychoactive substances. Alcohol isn't a psychoactive substance, but like these, psychedelics, ketamine, like all this kind of stuff, right? That's like psychoactive. I feel like in my personal experience, you kind of lose control a little bit. I'm not saying you're like, oh, you're fucking freaking out. You can freak out off of these, but like, it's not all the time. But I think it causes you to kind of lose control of that part of your brain. And when people lose control, whether sober or on substances, right, you got to seek a form of like order. You need some sort of order in your life. And I think that's kind of like a big reason of like why alt-right movements in general pop up. It's usually in times of like when people feel like they've lost control of like maybe their finances, their social life, whatever, anything else that falls within those categories or outside of those categories. Like people feel like they need someone to tell them what to do. They need someone to follow. Like they need like a higher essence that's like telling them what to do. I mean, that's what fascism is, right? Like, I mean, essentially, it's not completely the definition, but it's definitely like you're following orders, right? Even whether subconsciously or consciously, you're following orders, right? Now, when you're on a psychoactive substance, I feel like those feelings are kind of accentuated. Again, maybe you're not even noticing them, but those feelings are accentuated. Now open Instagram, right? You're on Reels. And I think especially for men, Instagram automatically feeds you more right-leaning content unless you like are actively, avoiding those kinds of videos or like liking, more left-leaning stuff. But like, I think with men, it automatically, Instagram's automatically feeding you like, right-wing content, softcore pornography, and like this kind of like these very masculine, more masculine things, right? Now, when you're on those substances on this platform, you're you've kind of lost that sense of control, and your mind's a little bit more open, right? You're more open to new ideas. Maybe you've never even been into politics, right? And especially right now, we're in a heavily politicized and divided time. There's a lot of content, right? There's a lot of videos about politics on both sides of the aisle, in the middle, whatever. Um, but since you're a man, it's like feeding you more of this right wing stuff. So obviously, the more substance you do, the more you spend time on like these social media apps, the more your mind's going to be able to be molded by these ideas. So then in your sober life, right? Like, a lot of people, they have revelations when they're on substances. A lot of people have, they their minds can completely change. I feel like my mind has changed from doing psychoactive substances, whether for good or for bad. But I think, it opens your mind. There's the classic trope, white guy discovers empathy on shrooms. Um, but I think this is a much darker version of that, right? Like, whatever, white guy discovers empathy on shrooms, great. Now he has empathy. I think there's a dark version of that where it's, oh, white guy discovers authoritarianism, right wing authoritarianism. Now what? You know what I mean? Like, now, oh shit, like that's not great. That's usually, in the past, that's kind of been bad. Um, and I think, like, so when these guys, they're on Instagram, just scrolling, getting those dopamine hits. The content's becoming more political, more right wing. Hey, you have problems. Oh, this group, that's the reason for your problems. Oh, they're gonna replace you. Oh, there's all these other things. You know what I mean? Like, these groups are the reason for your problems, and your mind's kind of like in that loss of control, open state, and you're like, oh my god, yeah, that is exactly why I'm having these problems. That's why I have low self esteem. That's why I can't talk to girls. That's why, like, I'm not making enough money. It's because of all these other factors outside of my control, right? Again, it goes back to this thing about control, that are causing me to have all these different issues, right? And I think it's interesting because in the 60s and stuff, like, people were doing all these substances, right? Obviously, they were completely different. Like, weed is obviously a lot more potent now than it was back in the 60s and 70s. But they were opening their minds and they were discovering, like, oh wow, like, let's white guy discovers empathy. Let's have empathy. You know what I mean? Like, we hate war. We hate all this other shit. And I'm completely going over a bunch of shit. But that was kind of like the whole hippie movement. It was a lot of like rich kids that just like did acid or shrooms or whatever, and we're like, wow, the world's so fucked up. Like, let's go roll around in a field. But they didn't have like social media that was constantly pushing these really negative ideas into their minds. I think naturally those psychoactive substances make you more empathetic, hence the white guy discovers empathy. They make you more empathetic if you're not like, if you don't have that outside, these other voices that are trying to like mold your mind and like make it this like hateful, like spiteful place. So like, I think it's always had that kind of effect, like social and political effect. But now, obviously, with basically every social media platform is owned by fucking like Palantir and Oracle, all these like people that they have vested interests in making men right wing, because that's gonna like help them uphold their system, right? Because all these people, they think they're fighting against the system. Like, bro, you are the system. You know what I mean? Like, and again, like I said in my last video, I don't have original ideas, right? This is just like me regurgitating shit I've heard. But like, I don't think that they intended like, oh yeah, because we're gonna target like guys that do drugs and like watch fucking short form content. I don't think they did that on purpose. Obviously they target guys, but I don't think they were like, in their minds they're like, these guys are gonna be on drugs watching it. Their minds are gonna be more open. I think it's very convenient that there's so much casual drug use now, especially with psychoactive substances, and we have these phones in our pockets, and we can just keep scrolling and get dopamine hits while we're getting like a massive dopamine hit. I think it's definitely really convenient. I don't think that they had that in mind, but who knows? You know what I mean? But basically, that's kind of what I'm saying. I don't want to keep rambling. It's going to be a shorter video. I realized yesterday I did like fucking 28 minutes of talking without realizing. So it's just something to think about. At the end of the day, I think we're all kind of, we're all being fed. Our minds are constantly being molded, whether sober or on substances or whatever, you know. But like, I think, this kind of like casual psychoactive use and the fact that we have access to like small dopamine hits in our pocket, it's really it's a good stage to like really change people's, mold people's minds and how you want them, and think about who controls all the social media. So anyways, thanks for joining again. Hope you guys enjoyed that.
This beat is avant-garde. Second